Welcome to Bedtime Whispers, where darkness comes to life and nightmares become reality. Hide and seek with a flashlight when I was 10 years old. All the kids in my neighborhood would gather late at night to play hide and seek with a flashlight. Do you know what flashlight hide and seek is? It's almost the same as hide and seek, except you have to play in the dark, and the one who is looking shines the flashlight around, looking for those who are hiding. If he spots someone, all he has to do is call out that person's name. One evening, it was really dark. The sky was overcast. The windows of almost all the houses were curtained, so it was the perfect evening for hiding. On my street behind the houses was a forest, a long swath of woods. It was the edge of hiding. You could hide anywhere, but not in the woods. It was very difficult to find someone there, because it was very easy to get lost among the branches or to hide behind the trunk of an oak tree. Of course, this rule was sometimes ignored when someone was afraid of being found. Children often hid behind bushes or trees to avoid being seen by the leader. Those of us who sometimes hid there like to scare the others by jumping out of the darkness and revealing our location. Once, I was hiding in my neighbor's yard. They had a little swing set in their yard. I was huddled against them when the beam of the lantern appeared. Suddenly, someone came out from around the corner of the house and shined the flashlight almost directly at me. I jumped aside and ran toward the woods. I lingered in front of the bushes for a minute, waiting to hear my name, in case I was spotted. The lantern light studied the swing for a while, then headed in my direction. For a second I thought I had caught the attention of the homeowners. Most of the parents in our neighborhood knew about our games, but there were some who didn't like it when kids climbed into their yard. I squatted in the grass and waited to see who it was. The man pointed the beam of the flashlight right in my face, and I raised my hands to cover my eyes. The strange thing was that he didn't utter a word, just stood there shining it at me. "You got me," I shouted, hoping that if it was the owner of the house, he would realize we were playing hide and seek. Then I noticed that 2 houses away from me, there was shouting and someone running around with a flashlight, chasing everyone. I stood up and tried to see who was shining the light on me. He kept standing there shining the light in my face without making a sound. I got scared. "Sorry for hiding in your yard," I said. The man began to walk toward me, something I didn't like about him, and I started to back away. The man kept shining a light in my face and coming at me. I ran. When I looked back, I saw that the man with the flashlight was also running. It was an adult. It was much bigger and faster than me. Now I was really scared. I didn't know why he was chasing me. At first, I ran to where I could hear the other children's voices, but they had already run off somewhere, and I found myself alone with a stranger. So I turned and dove into the woods. I fell to the ground and crawled under the thick ring of bushes curled up there. I saw the man shine his flashlight from side to side. I could hear his footsteps as branches and pine needles crunched beneath him. I had no idea who it was or what he wanted from me. All I wanted was to be where the other kids were playing. Eventually, the man with the flashlight went deeper into the woods, and I crawled silently, like a mouse, out from under the bushes. Once out of the woods, I ran toward the street and was immediately caught by the presenter, but I didn't care. He shouted my name and said that I was now the presenter. I tried to explain to him that there was someone else here with a flashlight, but he kept yelling, "You led, don't go into the woods." I yelled, but no one answered me. All the kids who heard my words just thought I was warning them not to cheat. Actually, I was just wary of the man with the flashlight. Now, I happened to have a flashlight myself, and I figured I could now see who was following me. Just to reassure myself, I walked back to the very house I'd come from, and I could hear children's laughter in the neighboring yards. I ignored them and headed toward the woods. I didn't see the lantern light, so I thought the man might have come home. Actually, I didn't know if it was a man or a woman, but I just couldn't imagine any woman going into the woods in the dark with a flashlight. So I went back to the game, even though I was worried that there might be someone in the woods now, too, walking around with a flashlight, and that someone wasn't going to play with us. I ran down the street, trying to catch the kids in the neighboring yards. But after a while, I found that there was no one in them. I ran back and began to explore the Bucky family's yard. Miss Bucky always hung a pile of laundry out there, and her daughter Charlotte liked to hide out there, closer to the house. She was a year younger than me. I thought I heard something in the woods, so I looked around and shined my flashlight into the trees. "Don't go into the woods," I called out again, and I swept the flashlight a few more times in one direction and the other until I came across someone in the distance. I pointed the flashlight there. It was hard to tell who it was, but it looked like Charlotte to me. She had brown hair that her mother had cut down to her shoulders, and she was wearing a dark purple shirt, so it could only be her. "Charlotte, I can see you," I shouted. She continued to stand still. I shined the flashlight on her and called her name again, but she didn't move. She was partially hidden by the tree and just stared at me. I was far enough away from her to see anything, but her head was angled like she was peering out from behind a tree trunk, and her mouth was wide open. Every now and then she twitched. It was very strange. "Charlotte, come out," I shouted. "Hey, everybody, Charlotte's in the woods, and she's not coming out of there." My friend Dustin and a few other kids appeared behind me and started calling for Charlotte too. "Do you see her?" I asked. "Yes, she's behind that tree." "Charlotte, come here," shouted Dustin, but she didn't move. "Charlotte, are you okay? Come here, silly." She straightened up for a moment, then disappeared behind a tree. We heard some movement, but it looked like she was moving away, not coming toward us. Dustin started shouting her name and ran after her into the woods. I gave him a flashlight. I got scared again because everything seemed somehow unreal. I went to Bucky's house and knocked on their door until her father came out. "Mr. Bucky, Charlotte isn't coming out of the woods, and I think something happened to her," I told him. I don't know how seriously he took my concern, but he rolled up his paper, disappeared into the halls for a moment, and then reappeared with a huge flashlight in his hand. "Show me where she is," he said, and I led him to the woods where I had last seen her. "She was here behind this tree," I said, but she didn't come out and acted as if she were ill or something had happened to her. The other kids kept calling for her, and I saw Dustin shining a flashlight in the woods. Mr. Bucky followed him. They had been combing the woods for 15 or 20 minutes, and Mr. Bucky was getting angry. We could hear him calling loudly for Charlotte, promising her every conceivable punishment if she didn't come out right away. By then, no play was out of the question, and we just stood at the edge of the woods and waited. Dustin came running out from behind the bushes, his flashlight running out of battery. Eventually, Mr. Buckeye came out too. "Playtime's over, kids," he said. "Go back home and tell your parents to help me look for my daughter and have them grab the lanterns." Everyone ran home. My father brought out 3 lanterns at once. My mother opened the curtains and turned on the lights in the backyard to make it brighter outside. I was sitting on the couch, upset, and my mom finally came over to me and started calming me down. I told her about the stranger with the lantern and my fears that Charlotte might have bumped into him. Mr. Bucky called the police and reported his daughter missing. Police officers arrived with dogs and combed the wooded area, carefully checking every nook and cranny. They did not find her. My mother told my father everything I had shared with her. He told the police officer about it. Eventually, a report was drawn up. The police went to the house where the stranger had spotted me, but the people there were asleep and didn't know what was going on in their yard. The police went around all the houses in the neighborhood, interviewing the residents, but no one saw or knew anything. At the other end of the wooded area was a country road, mostly driven by large trucks. 2 days later, Charlotte was found on the other side of the road, where logging was going on by the embankment near the creek. Her body had been dumped into a waste pipe. My parents didn't tell me anything. They thought they might hurt me. The next day at school, Dustin told me everything. He said that Charlotte's neck was broken and she had a lot of stab wounds. Nothing more horrible had ever happened in our little village. The police blocked the country road and checked all the truckers and the loggers who used the road for months. A curfew was imposed for several months, and my parents forbade us to play hide and seek. We didn't argue with them, but to this day, when I think of that awful day, I shudder when Charlotte's face comes to mind. She was peering out from behind a tree. Her eyes were clouded and her mouth wide open. It seems to me that she was already dead then, and that someone who was supporting her lifeless body was trying to lure me into the woods. Thank you so much for your attention. Subscribe to the channel. See you soon.